Hello everyone, and welcome to the Astro Consciousness channel. I'm Millie, and I am here to give you your forecast for the week of October 6th through the 12th. In this channel, we talk about the astrological energy of the week ahead and how you can integrate it into your personal and spiritual growth. As you can see, this week's forecast is a faceless forecast. It has been one of those weeks, and I am coming down with a cold. So, this is what we've got for this week. So, the week ahead, I like the week ahead. It's it's got, its lighter aspects, some aspects of tension, but I think we're really going to feel much more motivated than we have in the last couple of weeks, because I think the last couple of weeks have been so much about processing, releasing, letting go, surrendering. And I think that there have been so many gifts that have come from all of that. But also, I don't know about you all, but I felt an eclipse hangover from that solar eclipse in Virgo a few weeks ago, and it has been rough, right, in terms of energy. And I quite frankly think that my body personally has hit a point of like, okay, I've been working, I have been processing, I have been doing all the things, and I think that that's what's happening right now, in addition to the change in season. So I'd be curious to see how all of you have been experiencing the eclipse energy, because technically we are still in eclipse season, and how your bodies have been doing. That'll be really interesting to look into. Okay, so we begin the week with Monday, October 6th, and we begin the week with a full moon in Aries. So, for those of you who purchased the eclipse guide, you have a deep dive into the full moon in Aries, the spiritual and practical interpretation of that entire full moon. So I'm not going to go into it here, but I will touch on a few things. Every time we have the full moon in Aries, obviously it falls in Libra season, right? It's the full moon of Libra season. And every single time we have a full moon in Aries, it is a highlight asking us, who am I in this we? In its highest expression, it is that, who am I in this we? Okay, so let's say that during eclipse season, you had a lot coming up around relationships, not just romantic relationships, but relationships across the board, right? Familial, friendships, business, collaborations, any type of one-on-one relationship that was important to you. This full moon in Aries is highlighting, whoa, who did I realize that I am as an individual now based on the transformation that I've had in the last 6 months? And how am I relating to that one person now? Right? I think because of the nature of the Libra Aries axes in the zodiac, there is a person or singular people or separate relationships that might come up to mind for all of us in some way, shape, or form, where we can recognize and say, oh, okay, this is different. This dynamic is different. I'm different. I've changed. They've changed, right? So it changes the dynamic in the relationship. So we're still processing that. And in its highest expression, it is a sense of saying, this is who I am in this we, and perhaps who I am now in this we changes the we altogether. And I think that if that's the case, we probably already know it. We've probably realized it over the last, I would say, I don't know, 4 to 6 weeks. Okay. Another important thing to recognize about this full moon in Aries at 14 degrees Aries is that it is the full moon of the solar eclipse in Aries that took place on March 29th. So once again, we go back to March 29th, new moon eclipse in the sign of Aries. How much have I exercised my courage? How much have I learned to say no more to others? How much have I chosen myself again and again and again? And what have my relationships taught me about that? In addition to that, what has life shown me about my independence or perhaps codependence, right? And how much have I grown over the last 6 months in terms of that in relationships? One of the things we have to be mindful of is that in its lowest expression, this full moon in Aries is going to highlight perhaps some childish and maybe some dysregulated ways that we handle certain things in life, right? Or perhaps how people in our lives handle certain situations in very childish and dysregulated ways. We have to remember, right? Jupiter is in the sign of Cancer. And even though this full moon doesn't really activate that Jupiter in Cancer necessarily, we still have the energy of Jupiter in Cancer, and Jupiter in Cancer has been about healing the inner child. So here we have a full moon in Aries that will trigger, that will activate, that will push our buttons of our anger, of the way that we argue, of the way that we fight, right? Of our inner warrior. So it's an interesting full moon that I think is going to be very revelatory. I think it's also a full moon that is going to, in a higher expressions, I think it's going to motivate us a lot. I think we're going to say, you know what? Okay, I've learned so much over the last 6 to 8 weeks. Here I go. And the reason for that is that on the same day, Monday, October 6th, Mercury moves into the sign of Scorpio and remains there till October 29th. Mercury and Scorpio is focused. It doesn't want any distractions. It wants silence to process. It wants to dedicate its attention to something to something in particular, to something that it cares about. Mercury and Scorpio, I think, can be really great for us to focus. October, I think that this full moon in Aries sets off the month of October. And it's fiery, it's kind of like go-getter energy, it's action-oriented. And Mercury and Scorpio, if we use it properly, if we set an intention for the month of October to grow our business, move our business forward in a different way, create different partnerships, to really mind the business of our life, right? Whether you have a business or not, I think it can be very, very powerful. It can be something where you kind of shift the energy of the rest of the year and you say, okay, it's time to focus on me. It's time to really focus on what matters. So understand that there is a lot of supportive energy at the beginning of this week and throughout the rest of the week. And of course, because we are the oracles of our lives, because there is such a thing as free will, we'll be the only ones who get to choose how to move forward. Okay, Tuesday, October 7th, that Mercury in Scorpio creates a square to Pluto in Aquarius. On the one hand, I think that in the collective way, and perhaps in some ways in our lives, we're going to find something out, right? Mercury in Scorpio is a lot about secrets. It's a lot about things that are kept in the shadows. So the square, which is an activation point of tension to Pluto, which also rules Scorpio, tends to manifest itself in finding something out. Maybe not on that day, maybe throughout the week. So keep that in mind. I think this can also be an incredible week to have a therapy session or a session with your coach or a facilitator because Remember, Scorpio rules the shadow. Scorpio rules the depths of the psyche, and the square to Pluto is incredibly powerful. This calls for a pivotal, perhaps even transformational aha moment, and not one that necessarily feels great, but one that feels absolutely necessary and not necessarily about others, but about ourselves. About, oh, this is what I've been in denial of. This is what I have been refusing to look at. Or I didn't even realize this was there. So it can actually be a very powerful aha moment that you need a few days to process, but powerful and liberating nonetheless. Okay. Um, on a lower expression, you want to be very mindful once again, especially with that full moon in Aries energy of arguing with others. I think, we have Mercury in Scorpio, Scorpio being a fixed sign, square Pluto in Aquarius also being a fixed sign. Um, People sinking in their heels and saying, no, this is what I believe. This is what I believe with a passion, and not being able to see eye to eye. So if that is the case, remember the invitation here isn't to try and convince anyone to see anything from your perspective, especially not in a fixed energy. But the invitation is to go within. That's what Mercury and Scorpio invites you to do. Go within. What do you feel? What do you want to say? How do you want to communicate it? And maybe you're not communicating it to the person that you might have an argument or a disagreement with. Maybe you're communicating it in safe space, again, in a therapeutic space, or with a friend that you trust. So I personally love that Mercury and Scorpio square Pluto in Aquarius. If we set an intention, it can be really powerful. But if we're pretty reactive, it can still have a lot of lessons. But again, you get to choose. Okay, Wednesday, October 8th, we have Venus in Virgo, sextile Jupiter in Cancer. This is a lovely sextile. I think it's a sextile that lends itself to asking for help and getting it. It's a sextile that lends itself to delegating. It's a sextile that lends itself to asking, what do I need and what do I need to do for myself to feel better? Especially if it comes to health, right? To your well-being, your sense of nurturing yourself. But here's the thing. At the time of this sextile, Venus is within a couple of degrees of opposing Saturn in Pisces. Let's say that you are asking for help in any way, shape, or form. That's Venus sextile Jupiter. People want to help you. Someone wants to help you. But Venus's opposition to Saturn says you still have to work for it yourself. You still have to work. You still have to put in some effort, right? So let's say that I think a really practical example is you hiring a coach for someone. But just because you're hiring a coach for something, excuse me, does not mean that you don't have to do any work. Does not mean that a great degree of responsibility does not fall on you. It's more about being guided. It's more about relieving you of all the weight, but you still having to put in some effort. I think Venus and Virgo, sextile Jupiter and Cancer can also be healing in other ways. I think if you have a breakthrough moment, an aha moment, this can be a time of appreciating how healing this actually is to understand. Okay. All right. On Thursday, October 9th, we have Venus in Virgo create a trine to the moon in Taurus. Very earthy energy, very grounded energy. It's an energy that calls for to-do lists, especially if this has to do with talking to an accountant, getting your money in order. Um, if you are someone that works for yourself and with this full moon in Aries, you're putting something out into the world, it's about tracking, right? If this has nothing to do with you selling anything, with you not working for yourself, this is a great day for you to take advantage of organizing some part of your life, organizing even your physical spaces. The moon in Taurus is the invitation of looking around in your physical space and saying, does this feel good? Does this feel supportive? And Venus in Virgo, organizing it, right? The relationship to your life, how the organization of your life makes you feel. This is also a great day because the moon is in Taurus. Venus rules Taurus. It's a great day for any beauty treatments, right? If you want to do any kind of facial or if you want to, I don't know, cut your hair, anything that has to do with taking care of yourself. On Friday, October 10th, we don't really have much going on. On Saturday, October 11th, it's the exact opposition between Venus and Saturn. Okay. When Venus and Saturn come together, this is about serious commitment to relationships, serious commitment to responsibility and money, serious commitment to the relationship to self, having healthy boundaries in relationships with others. So, this opposition over the weekend, I think, is going to continue to highlight how certain boundaries need to be implemented with others, perhaps how certain conversations need to be had, because Saturn's not playing here. Any connection to Saturn, Saturn will always win. So the responsibility and the duty that we have with ourselves, Saturn will show us. And again, because of everything that we've learned over the last couple of weeks, things are clear. Things are clear. This is what I'm willing to tolerate and what I'm no longer willing to tolerate from myself and from others, right? I'll tell you one thing. I have had the Virgo Pisces eclipses in my 6-12 house axes, right? So the axes of physical and mental health. This Venus in Virgo opposition to Saturn in Pisces has so much to do with what became clear to me during eclipses in September, which is, wow, I really need to be a little bit more consistent and disciplined, Saturn, with all of the supplements that I take, the time that I take them at, with drinking more water, with making sure that I get enough magnesium at night. Like, I am at a point in my life where getting older is really showing me, wow, I can't not have a regimen in the way that I did, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, right? I'm 38, going to be 39 in a few months. And my intention is to enter my 40s, right, in the best health possible. And it begins now, right? So that's just an example of how any connection to Saturn is you've got to take this seriously and you've got to commit, right? And of course, as a Capricorn, I take that very seriously. I'm ruled by Saturn. Um, and so it's interesting. It's really interesting how whatever boundaries, commitments, and things that we can no longer tolerate are absolutely made clear this week, especially over the weekend. Okay, on Sunday, October 12th, we have the moon in the sign of Cancer. And the moon is in its home sign. It's beautiful energy for a Sunday. We probably want to be home. We probably just want to take care of ourselves, want to nurture ourselves, whether it's with what we eat, what we listen to, what we consume. If we are around people, maybe we want to be around family or people who feel like family. Either way, the moon in Cancer on a Sunday is like chicken soup for the soul type of thing. Okay. So I hope that's helpful. It's a pretty straightforward week. I like it. I think we're starting to snap out of, once again, that eclipse season hangover. I think it's a great week that if we get focused and get motivated, we can accomplish things that were made very clear to us we need to commit to. Um, and yeah, it's a grateful booted Aries that marks the after of eclipses and it's kind of like the fog of the eclipses is starting to really get lifted. Okay. Thank you all so much. As always, may this be of service. So much love to you, and I will talk to you next week. Take care.